Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Sirius TL 3000.
Welcome back to part 2 of our European flying adventure. Today's journey begins in the heart of Italy as we departed Rome, leaving behind the bustling capital and setting course for one of the world's most unique cities. Our route would take us across the Italian countryside, flying over rolling hills, fertile plains, and historic towns before reaching the shimmering waters of the Adriatic coast. With temperatures already soaring on the ground, we had expected a bumpy ride. During the summer months, intense sunshine heats the landscape unevenly, causing columns of rising warm air known as thermals. These can make flying in a light aircraft an uncomfortable experience, with constant bumps and changes in altitude as the aircraft passes through pockets of rising and sinking air. But today, the atmosphere had other ideas. To our surprise, the air was remarkably smooth. Despite the intense heat below, there was little to no thermal activity, allowing us to enjoy an exceptionally comfortable flight. The TL 3000 cruised effortlessly through the calm air, making it easy to sit back and appreciate the incredible scenery unfolding beneath us. Sometimes aviation rewards you with those rare, almost magical days when everything comes together perfectly. Clear skies, excellent visibility, smooth air, and another exciting destination waiting on the horizon. With Venice now ahead of us, we settled into the cruise and looked forward to discovering yet another unforgettable corner of Europe from the best seat in the house. Before long, the rugged mountains that form the spine of central Italy were behind us, and the landscape began to flatten as we continued our journey towards the Adriatic coast. From the cockpit, we watched the scenery transform from dramatic peaks and forested valleys into fertile plains, patchwork farmland, and historic towns that have been connected by trade routes for thousands of years. One thing that really stood out during this leg of the flight was just how accommodating Italian air traffic control was. Despite operating in some of Europe's busiest airspace, the controllers were exceptionally helpful, granting us numerous controlled airspace transits along the route. Rather than having to make lengthy detours around restricted and controlled zones, we were cleared straight through them, saving both time and fuel. As we continued north, a splash of colour suddenly appeared beneath our wings. Stretching out across the landscape was an enormous network of salt pans, their shallow pools glowing in an incredible patchwork of pinks, blues, greens, and brilliant whites. From our altitude, the geometric patterns looked almost like a giant mosaic painted across the Italian coastline. Another fascinating sight on our journey towards Venice was a series of unusual wooden structures standing high above the shallow waters of the Adriatic coast. Known locally as padaloni, these iconic fishing huts have become a distinctive feature of this part of Italy. From the air, they almost look like tiny houses balanced precariously above the river, each one supporting an enormous suspended fishing net below. It's a scene unlike anywhere else in Europe, and one that's instantly recognizable from above. These remarkable structures use a traditional fishing method known as lift net fishing, a technique that has been practiced along the Adriatic coast for centuries. Large square nets are lowered beneath the surface and left to sit quietly in the water before being slowly winched back up. Any fish, eels, squid, or crabs swimming above the net are gently lifted from the sea without the need for boats trawling the coastline. In less than an hour, we'd crossed the entire width of Italy. After departing Rome on the Tyrrhenian coast, we were now following the shoreline of the Adriatic Sea, tracing Italy's eastern edge as the miles to Venice steadily counted down. It's remarkable to think that a journey from Rome to Venice, which would take 6 to 7 hours by car or several hours by train, can be completed in just over an hour in a light aircraft. That's one of the greatest joys of general aviation. It transforms countries that seem vast on a road map into destinations that are surprisingly close together, opening up the freedom to explore multiple regions in a single day. Before long, we found ourselves flying alongside the Lido di Venezia, the long, slender barrier island that guards one of the world's most remarkable cities. Stretching for around 12 kilometres, the Lido forms a natural divide between the open waters of the Adriatic Sea and the calm, sheltered Venetian Lagoon. From the cockpit, its purpose becomes instantly clear. On one side, the vast Adriatic stretches to the horizon, while on the other lies the tranquil lagoon where Venice appears to float effortlessly on the water. For centuries, the Lido has protected the city from the full force of the sea, acting as a natural barrier that helps regulate the tides flowing in and out of the lagoon and shielding Venice from the relentless power of the open Mediterranean. From the air, the contrast is breathtaking. The straight, sandy coastline of the Lido gives way to a labyrinth of shimmering waterways, tiny islands, and historic buildings, creating a landscape unlike anywhere else on Earth. As we followed the island northwards, we knew we were only moments away from one of the most spectacular aerial views Europe has to offer. Venice was finally coming into sight. One of the biggest advantages of flying into Venice Lido Airport is its location. Unlike Venice's main commercial airports, which are some distance from the city, Lido sits just a short journey away. Within minutes of landing, you can be boarding a water bus or water taxi bound for the heart of Venice, making it one of the most convenient gateways for general aviation pilots visiting the city. As we approached the airfield, we were instructed by air traffic control to contact the tower. We switched frequencies and made our initial call. Nothing. We tried again, still no reply. After several more attempts, it became apparent that nobody was responding. At smaller airports, particularly outside peak operating hours, it's not unusual for the control tower to be temporarily unstaffed or for the airfield to revert to an unattended radio service. In those situations, pilots follow published procedures by making blind radio calls announcing their position and intentions so that any other aircraft in the vicinity are aware of their movements. With no response from the tower and no conflicting traffic reported, we continued in accordance with the published procedures. Ahead of us lay the runway, with the Venetian Lagoon glistening in the afternoon sunshine, a fitting backdrop for what promised to be one of the most memorable landings of the entire journey. A few moments later, the main wheels settled gently onto the grass runway, bringing another smooth landing to a successful conclusion. We carefully taxied across the well-maintained grass to the parking area, surrounded by light aircraft from across the continent. With the engine shut down, we carried out the final checks before securing the aircraft. Strong coastal winds can arrive unexpectedly around the Venetian Lagoon, so making sure the aircraft was properly tied down was an important final task. Once everything was secure, we gathered our bags and took one last look at the TL-3000, now resting just a stone's throw from one of the world's most extraordinary cities. The flying may have been over for the day, but our Venetian adventure was only just beginning. Within minutes of arriving, we were on a Vaporetto, bus-like boats that take you to and around Venice. It was now time to make the dreaded call to Rome approach.
Hello Roma approach control.
Hey, this is the commander of Golf X-Ray India Lima Mike. You requested I call you upon landing.
Ah yes, we wanted you to call us to let us know. You made it safely as Lido Tower was to be shut, and so as we could close the flight plan, sir.
Yes, we have arrived safely. Thanks for checking in with us. That was it. After all the worrying, all the replaying of the flight in my head, and imagining every possible scenario, that was it. I couldn't help but laugh. A huge sense of relief washed over me. The tension I'd been carrying ever since leaving Rome disappeared in an instant. It's funny how the mind works. Sometimes we build situations up to be far worse than they really are, especially when we don't know the outcome. But don't get too comfortable. If you were hoping to see me make a genuine pilot error, I'm afraid your patience is about to be rewarded. Because on the very next leg of the journey, I make a rather silly mistake, one that's entirely my own doing. Anyway, enough about that. There would be plenty of time for aviation lessons later. Right now, it was time to do what we'd come here for, explore Venice for the very first time. From the moment we stepped off the Vaporetto, it was clear this was unlike anywhere we'd ever visited. There are no cars, no buses, and no motorbikes weaving through the streets. Instead, canals take the place of roads, with gondolas, water taxis, delivery boats, and Vaporettos forming a unique transport network that has served the city for centuries. As we explored Venice's famous waterways, it was impossible not to be amazed by the city that surrounded us. Often called the floating city, Venice is unlike anywhere else on Earth. Built across 118 small islands connected by more than 400 bridges and separated by around 170 canals, it has no roads for cars. Instead, its canals serve as streets, with everything from ambulances and police boats to delivery barges and even rubbish collection taking place on the water. For over 1,000 years, Venice was one of the most powerful cities in Europe. At the height of the Venetian Republic, which lasted for more than 1,100 years, the city became a major centre of trade, connecting Europe with the Middle East and Asia. Merchant ships filled these very canals carrying valuable cargo such as silk, spices, precious metals and exotic goods from around the world, making Venice one of the richest cities of its time. One of the most remarkable things about Venice is how it was built. Rather than sitting on solid rock, the city rests on millions of wooden piles driven deep into the muddy floor of the lagoon. Although it sounds impossible, the timber has survived for centuries because it's permanently submerged in oxygen-poor water, preventing it from rotting. Over time, minerals in the water have actually hardened much of the wood, creating surprisingly strong foundations that continue to support the city's magnificent buildings today. As we cruised along the Grand Canal, Venice's main waterway, it felt like travelling through a living museum. Elegant palaces, centuries-old churches, and colourful waterfront buildings line the canal, many dating back to the city's golden age. It's no surprise that Venice has been recognised as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, attracting millions of visitors each year who come to experience one of the most extraordinary cities ever built. Whether you're arriving by boat or, like us, by light aircraft, Venice has a way of making you feel as though you've stepped into another world. Every bridge, every canal, and every historic building tells a story. After a day spent exploring one of the world's most unique cities, we treated ourselves to dinner at one of Venice's many traditional restaurants. Back at the hotel, the maps, iPad, and weather charts all came back out. One of the realities of touring by light aircraft is that every day's flying begins the night before. We carefully checked the latest weather forecasts, reviewed NOTAMs for any temporary airspace restrictions, planned our fuel requirements, and studied the route in detail. Tomorrow promised another exciting milestone. We would be leaving Italy behind and setting course for another country we'd never flown to before. Today's flight would see us fly from Italy to Croatia. Lining up on the runway, I took one last look along the centre line before smoothly advancing the throttle. Airspeed was alive, the controls became increasingly responsive, and the scenery outside the windscreen started to blur as we accelerated towards takeoff speed. A gentle pull on the control column and the nose wheel lifted clear of the runway. Seconds later, the main wheels followed, and we were airborne once again, climbing away from Venice as the Venetian Lagoon sparkled beneath us in the early morning sunshine. The climb out was completely routine. The engine was running smoothly, the aircraft was performing exactly as expected, and we continued climbing away from Venice with the Adriatic sparkling beneath us. Everything felt normal, and then all hell broke loose. What the door! So, what actually happened? Without any warning, the cockpit door suddenly flew fully open during the climb out. A sudden bang and rush of air triggered what pilots call the startle effect, a perfectly natural human response to an unexpected event. At around 100 miles per hour, the airflow was incredibly strong. Reaching across, I put my arm into the slipstream and grabbed the door. Reflecting on it afterwards, the cause became obvious. I'd completed all of my pre-departure checks and the door had been correctly secured before engine start, but while taxiing out, I noticed that I'd accidentally trapped the cable from my headset in the door seal. To free it, I released the locking latch, opened the door just enough to pull the cable back inside, and then closed the door again. At almost the exact same moment, air traffic control came through with a lengthy departure clearance. As they read out a series of frequencies, headings, and instructions, I instinctively reached for a pen to copy everything down, and that's where the chain of events began. Like many aviation incidents, it wasn't caused by one major mistake. It was the result of a series of small distractions lining up at exactly the wrong time. With everything finally back to normal and the aircraft secure once again, we turned our attention to the next stage of the adventure. Ahead of us lay a short crossing of the northern Adriatic Sea and passing an invisible line into Croatian airspace, another new country to add to our journey. Every mile carried us closer to another new adventure, another new stamp in the logbook, and one of Europe's most spectacular coastlines. One of the great advantages of touring Europe by light aircraft is how effortlessly borders disappear. Countries that would take an entire day to reach by road are often just minutes apart from the cockpit. There's no long motorway queues or crowded ferry terminals, just open sky, a flight plan, and the freedom to explore. As we tracked south across Croatian airspace, it was immediately obvious why this coastline is regarded as one of the most breathtaking in Europe. Stretching for almost 1,800 kilometers, Croatia's Adriatic coastline is famous for its incredibly clear, turquoise waters and an astonishing 1,200 plus islands, islets and reefs scattered along its length. From the cockpit, the view was simply extraordinary. Every few miles another emerald green island appeared, surrounded by water so crystal clear that in many places you could make out the seabed beneath the surface. The clarity of the Adriatic is no accident. With very little sediment flowing into the sea and constant circulation of clean water, visibility can often exceed 30 meters, giving the sea its famous shades of deep sapphire and brilliant turquoise that have made Croatia a favorite destination for sailors, divers and pilots alike. Flying above it all offered a perspective few people ever experience. The countless islands formed a seemingly endless chain stretching towards the horizon, each with its own secluded coves, hidden beaches and rugged limestone cliffs. Some islands are home to bustling harbour towns that have existed for centuries, while others remain completely uninhabited, providing untouched pockets of natural beauty. It was every bit as spectacular as I'd imagined. After years of seeing photographs of Croatia's coastline, finally experiencing it from the cockpit exceeded every expectation. The combination of the dazzling Adriatic Sea, the maze of islands below, and the freedom of flying a light aircraft through one of Europe's most beautiful landscapes made this one of those unforgettable moments that reminds you exactly why adventures like this are worth every mile. Before long, it was time to begin our approach into what many pilots consider to be one of Europe's more challenging airfields, Brač Airport. Perched on a plateau around 1,700 feet above sea level, the airport sits high above Croatia's stunning Adriatic coastline. Unlike most approaches where you're descending towards the runway, this one would require us to do exactly the opposite. Air traffic control kept us not above 1,500 feet for much of the arrival to keep us safely separated from the busy traffic, operating in and out of Split's controlled airspace just across the water. That meant we were actually flying below the elevation of our destination runway. It feels completely unnatural the first time you experience it. Instead of reducing power and descending for landing, we found ourselves adding power and climbing towards the airport. We requested to get a climb to 3,500 as the airfield is known for its challenging winds on top of the mountain, and we wanted some safety margin with our approach. As the train climbed to meet us, and with the runway in view, sitting proudly on top of the island like an aircraft carrier anchored in the mountains. It's this unusual combination of elevated terrain, variable winds, nearby controlled airspace, and the need for careful energy management that has earned Brač its reputation as one of Croatia's most interesting airports to fly into. It was certainly unlike any approach we'd flown before, and yet another reminder that no two airfields are ever the same. But we do like a challenge. I was hoping for our departure we would get to take off right over the cliff drop, which would be an interesting experience. Brač Airport is one of those places that leaves a lasting impression on pilots. Opened in 1993, it sits high on the island's central plateau, making it one of the highest airports serving Croatia's Adriatic islands. The airport primarily serves the island of Brač, one of Croatia's largest islands and home to the world-famous Zlatni Rat, or the Golden Horn Beach. This extraordinary beach is famous because its narrow, pointed shape constantly changes with the wind, waves and sea currents, making it one of the most photographed beaches in Europe. Although the runway is over 1,700 meters long, more than enough for most general aviation aircraft and even regional airliners, the approach demands careful planning. Pilots often have to coordinate closely with air traffic control because of the proximity of Split's busy controlled airspace, while the elevated terrain means the visual perspective can be deceptive compared with a typical sea-level airport. Adding to the challenge, Brač is well known for experiencing strong Bora winds. The Bora is a cold, dry wind that can funnel through the surrounding mountains and produce significant turbulence and crosswinds, making conditions far more demanding than they might appear on a calm summer's day. For pilots, however, these challenges are part of the appeal. Flying into Brač isn't just about reaching another destination, it's about experiencing one of Europe's most memorable island approaches, where dramatic scenery, mountainous terrain and the deep blue Adriatic combine to create a landing that's every bit as rewarding as the destination itself. We were fortunate to be granted permission to stay for 2 nights, with just one condition: we needed to depart by 10 a.m. on the morning of our departure to free up parking space for the next wave of incoming aircraft. As we vacated the runway, we were treated to a level of service that neither of us had experienced before. Almost immediately, a follow-me vehicle appeared and guided us across the airfield to the fuel pumps. Waiting for us was a team of ground staff who took care of everything. They refueled the aircraft while we simply stepped back and watched. Once the tanks were full, the follow-me car led us to our parking stand, where the same team carefully marshalled us into position. Before we'd even climbed out of the cockpit, they were already securing the aircraft, fitting the wheel chocks and expertly tying it down against any coastal winds that might arrive overnight. The hospitality didn't stop there. Knowing we'd need transport into town, the staff kindly offered to arrange a taxi for us, explaining that we didn't even need to pay until we returned to the airport on departure day. It was a small gesture, but one that perfectly summed up the friendly, welcoming attitude we'd encountered from the moment we landed. As touring pilots, you quickly come to appreciate airports that go the extra mile, and Brač was certainly one of them. The professionalism, efficiency and genuine friendliness of everyone on the ground turned what could have been an ordinary arrival into one of the most memorable airport experiences of our entire European adventure. Just 10 minutes after leaving the airport, our taxi pulled up outside our accommodation. Stepping out onto the waterfront, it was immediately obvious why this place has become such a popular destination. The beaches were every bit as spectacular from ground level as they had looked from the cockpit. The Adriatic shimmered in countless shades of turquoise and deep blue, while the water was so incredibly clear it almost looked like glass. Even standing on the shore, you could see the rocky seabed several meters below the surface. As the evening sun began to sink lower over the Adriatic, the waterfront came alive. Restaurants filled with locals and visitors alike, yachts gently rocked in the harbour, and the relaxed Mediterranean atmosphere made it easy to forget we were halfway through an ambitious flying expedition. For the next couple of days we could swap flight plans for beach walks, air traffic control for the sound of the waves, and simply enjoy one of the most beautiful islands we'd ever had the pleasure of visiting. As with all great adventures, this chapter of the journey eventually had to come to an end. After 2 unforgettable days exploring the stunning island of Brač, it was time to return to the airport, untie the aircraft and prepare for the next leg of our European tour. Our next destination was Slovenia, another country we'd never been nor flown to before, and the seventh country of our flying adventure. Before long, we were once again lined up on the runway, the final checks complete and clearance received. I smoothly advanced the throttle to full power as the TL3000 surged forward, gathering speed for another departure into the crystal clear Croatian skies. There was just one small difference this time. You can be absolutely certain I triple-checked that the cockpit door was properly locked. After the unexpected excitement leaving Venice, I wasn't about to let history repeat itself. I gave the latch one final firm tug before rolling onto the runway, making sure it was fully engaged this time. It's amazing how one small mistake can permanently change your routine, and I suspect I'll be checking that door with a little extra enthusiasm for many flights to come. As much as we were looking forward to the next country on our journey, leaving the island of Brač wasn't easy. In just 2 days, it had become one of our favourite places we'd ever visited. Between the warm hospitality we'd received at the airport, the crystal clear Adriatic Sea, and the laid-back Mediterranean atmosphere, Brač had completely exceeded every expectation. It's rare to find somewhere that leaves such a lasting impression in such a short space of time, but this island certainly managed it. Soon we were tracking north once again under the watchful guidance of split air traffic control, climbing away from Brač and back out over the sparkling Adriatic. This time, however, we'd filed a different flight plan. Rather than retracing our route from the journey south, we deliberately chose a more scenic track, giving us the opportunity to experience even more of Croatia's spectacular coastline from the air. One of the greatest advantages of travelling by light aircraft is that you're never restricted to the fastest route. Sometimes the most rewarding flights are the ones that take the long way around. One of Croatia's greatest treasures is its extraordinary natural beauty. Nearly 10% of the country is protected as national parks or nature reserves, preserving dramatic waterfalls, ancient forests, rugged mountains and pristine islands. It's a country where nature still takes centre stage. The Adriatic Sea below us is among the clearest in the Mediterranean, with underwater visibility often exceeding 30 metres. That's why the water appears to glow in such vivid shades of turquoise and deep blue from the cockpit, making it almost impossible to resist looking outside. Croatia has also become one of Europe's premier destinations for sailors. Its countless sheltered bays, hidden coves and island harbours create an endless playground for those exploring by sea. But from the air you gain an entirely different appreciation. You can see how every island, peninsula and secluded beach fits together like pieces of an enormous natural puzzle. As we continued north, it became increasingly clear why Croatia has become one of Europe's fastest growing travel destinations. Whether explored by boat, on foot, or, as we were fortunate enough to experience, from the cockpit of a light aircraft, it's a country that rewards you with unforgettable scenery at every turn. Flying above it all, with the Adriatic sparkling beneath the wings and the islands stretching endlessly towards the horizon, this was undoubtedly one of the highlights of our entire European adventure. Quite a few of you have asked in the comments about the aircraft, and in particular, what sort of fuel it uses and how much it burns on these long European adventures. Our aircraft is powered by the Rotax 912 AS, the latest fuel-injected version of the hugely popular Rotax engine that's become one of the most widely used power plants in modern light aircraft. One of its biggest advantages is its incredible fuel efficiency, making trips like this far more affordable than many people imagine. Cruising at our normal touring speed, we typically burn around 16 litres of fuel per hour, while achieving a true airspeed of approximately 115 knots, or around 132 miles per hour. That gives us an excellent balance between speed and economy, allowing us to cover large distances across Europe without burning huge amounts of fuel. We can go faster, but the fuel burn increases substantially. If we're not in a hurry, we can slow the aircraft down to around 100 knots and the fuel burn drops dramatically to just 10 litres per hour. That's less fuel than many family cars use travelling the same distance, which still amazes people when they hear it. Another great feature of the Rotax 912 IS is its flexibility. Unlike many traditional aircraft engines that require aviation gasoline, the Rotax can happily run on either avgas or premium Mo gas, essentially high-quality car petrol with little or no ethanol. That gives us much greater flexibility when touring Europe, where the availability and price of aviation fuel can vary considerably from one airport to the next. As we continued making good progress towards Slovenia, we settled into the cruise and simply enjoyed the incredible scenery unfolding. The rugged Dinaric Alps followed Croatia's coastline almost the entire way north, their limestone peaks rising dramatically from the edge of the Adriatic in one of Europe's most spectacular landscapes. The Dinaric Alps are among the longest mountain ranges in southern Europe, extending for over 650 kilometers through several Balkan countries. Many of the mountains are covered in dense pine forests and are home to wildlife including golden eagles, wolves, lynx, and even brown bears in the more remote regions. I didn't even know we had bears in Europe. With every passing mile, it became harder to decide where to look. The towering mountains to our right, the endless Adriatic to our left, or the maze of islands ahead. It was yet another reminder that some of the world's most spectacular scenery isn't found at famous landmarks. It's discovered in the moments between destinations, viewed from a few thousand feet above the earth. One thing that really stood out while flying through Croatia was just how peaceful the skies felt. Compared with some of the busier airspace we'd experienced around places like the UK, France and Italy, the radio was remarkably quiet. There were only a handful of aircraft checking in with air traffic control, making for a much more relaxed atmosphere in the cockpit. With fewer radio calls demanding my attention, I could finally settle into the cruise, keep a careful eye on the spectacular scenery outside, and for a change, enjoy some of my favourite music through my Bose A20 noise-cancelling headset. Sometimes the greatest memories aren't made during the exciting or dramatic parts of an adventure. They're made during the peaceful moments in between, when you realise just how fortunate you are to be flying over one of the most beautiful coastlines in Europe with nowhere to be except the next horizon, backed up by the perfect soundtrack playing in the background. Before long, the GPS showed us approaching another invisible line on the map, the Flight Information Region, or FIR, boundary between Croatia and Slovenia. Unlike national borders on the ground, there's nothing visible from the cockpit to mark the change. No fences, no checkpoints, and no signs, just an imaginary line in the sky separating one country's air traffic control from the next. As we reached the boundary, Croatia Air Traffic Control handed us over to the Slovenian controller with a friendly farewell, and after checking in on the new frequency, we officially entered the airspace of another country we'd never flown to before. Before long, we were handed over to Portorož approach, and it became immediately clear that this was a very different environment from the peaceful skies we'd enjoyed over Croatia. The frequency was alive with activity. Aircraft were arriving from every direction as pilots checked in, requested joining instructions and read back clearances. Despite the busy airspace, the controller remained calm and methodical, expertly slotting us into the sequence behind 3 other aircraft for the approach. As we closed in on the airport, however, something caught my attention. One after another, I heard pilots calling a go-around, while others reported missed approaches. It wasn't just one aircraft, there seemed to be a steady stream of them. That immediately raised a red flag in my mind. There was clearly something making this approach more demanding than usual. Rather than guessing, I keyed the mic and asked for a wind check. A reply came back almost instantly.
Golf Lima Mike surface wind, 15 knots, gusting 24 knots, direct crosswind.
That explained everything. A 15-knot crosswind with gusts up to 24 knots is enough to test both pilot and aircraft, particularly when the wind is blowing at 90 degrees across the runway. A steady 15-knot cross is the demonstrated limit for the TL3000. Every gust changes the amount of drift, requiring constant control inputs right down to touchdown. It's the sort of day when no two landings are ever the same. For many pilots, hearing those conditions would be enough to raise the heart rate, mine included. I was glad and studied the charts in preparation for a go-around, as immediately after the end of the runway, it is surrounded by high ground, which requires precise and instant action on the climb out to keep the aircraft safely away from terrain. Every landing is different, and today would demand precise airspeed control, good judgment and a well-executed crosswind technique, as well as being ready to abort and run the necessary actions in the aircraft to efficiently climb out again, if required. But we do like a good challenge. This was exactly the kind of flying adventure we'd come to Europe for. Thankfully, we nailed the landing and got down on our first attempt, with the mighty TL3000 getting a well-deserved pat on the dashboard. What a capable machine she is proving to be. Within minutes of shutting down the engine, a fuel truck pulled alongside the aircraft, allowing us to remain parked while the ground crew took care of the refueling. No sooner had the refueling been completed than another surprise arrived. A small airport golf cart pulled up beside the aircraft. The driver jumped out with a smile, loaded our luggage into the back and simply said, "Hop in." The service didn't end there. When we asked the staff how we could arrange a taxi to our hotel, they smiled and told us not to worry. The airport actually operates its own people carrier, transporting arriving pilots to local hotels. Before leaving, they handed us a telephone number and explained that whenever we wanted to return to the airport, we simply had to call and they would come and collect us. Once we'd settled into our hotel, it was time to explore the town itself. Often referred to as the Las Vegas of Slovenia, Portorož has earned its nickname thanks to its vibrant nightlife, luxury hotels and famous casinos that have attracted visitors for decades. But unlike the bright lights of Nevada, Portorož combines that glamorous atmosphere with the relaxed charm of the Adriatic coast. The town's history as a resort stretches back to the 19th century, when wealthy visitors from across Europe travelled here to enjoy the area's mild climate, sea air, and therapeutic saltwater treatments. Today, elegant promenades, palm-lined waterfronts, sandy beaches, and stylish cafes sit alongside historic hotels and casinos, creating a unique blend of seaside relaxation and sophisticated entertainment. We hope you've enjoyed part 2 of our European flying adventure, but the adventure is far from over. Join us in part 3 as we return to Italy before following the world-famous French Riviera from the air. We'll fly over some of the Mediterranean's most glamorous coastline, visit an Airbus training centre, and get an exclusive look behind the scenes at a facility where brand new aircraft are prepared and handed over to their owners. If you've enjoyed coming along on this journey, we'd really appreciate your support. Please like the video, leave us a comment to let us know your favourite destination so far, and subscribe to the channel. Every like, comment and subscription helps more people discover these adventures and allows us to keep creating documentaries that showcase just how incredible touring Europe in a light aircraft can be. Until next time, thanks for flying with us, and we'll see you in part 3 for the next chapter of the adventure.